Welcome to the What Happens Next podcast. I'm your host, Chris Dames, and today we're going to be looking at some of the challenges we might face if we're thinking about either retirement or what happens next in our lives. Because this is what this podcast is all about. It's all about looking at the next stage of our lives, typically when we're in our 50s and 60s, and thinking about what's next. And that some of the issues, challenges, opportunities, and risks we need to think about when we're thinking about that next stage. As I say, I'm Chris, and the reason I'm hosting this podcast is for 20 years now, I've helped people answer the money question in relation to what happens next. And that's because I'm a chartered financial planner and run my own chartered financial planning business, which I absolutely love. But a couple of years ago now, I realised that having conversations just about the money, whilst really important, probably isn't enough. And we need to make sure that when we're thinking about that next stage of our lives, we are thinking about it in a bit more of a broader way. So this podcast is dedicated to have conversations around that area. And I mentioned that we don't only focus on the money. However, today's conversation with my very special guest, Lesley Thomas, is about money. Because Lesley, who I've known for a few years, runs the Money Confidence Academy. And during our interview today, we talk about the connection between financial well-being, mindset, and the stories we tell ourselves about money. It's really interesting. In my day job, a lot of the conversations, a lot of the value we add to our clients is filling the technical gaps, filling those gaps of knowledge that our clients haven't got, but we help them fill. But interestingly, there's no denying that money is emotional. And Lesley specialises in helping people work out what they want from their money, help them understand what their relationship is with money, and unlock some of those opportunities to live a better life with the money they've got. So I'm really excited about interviewing Lesley today. I'm really excited about some of the things that we're going to be talking about, like limiting beliefs, particularly limiting beliefs about money, how we practically rewrite our relationship with money and the scripts we tell ourselves. We dive deep into the conversation around money and self-worth. And we talk about what mindsets we need to think about shifting when we're thinking about that next chapter. There's loads of practical tips in this interview. I know you're going to get loads out of it. So without further ado, let's get on with the show. We're on a mission with What Happens Next to help as many people as we can navigate the next chapter of their life. So I need a favour. I'd like you to visit our YouTube channel at What Happens Next Live, and we'll make sure we put a link to the YouTube channel in the comments. Enjoy the videos, like the ones that you get benefit from, but most importantly, please subscribe. We want to help as many people as we can with What Happens Next, and subscribing to our YouTube channel for free is the easiest way you can help us. Lesley, thank you for joining us so much today. I really appreciate it. How are you?
I am really, really well, thank you, Chris, and thank you for having me. I always love our conversations, and I know it'll be no different today. I'm going to love what we're going to talk about.
I know that I'm going to learn a lot, and hopefully our audience will too. But I'm confident that we're going to explore some areas where both I'm going to benefit and our audience are going to benefit. But before we start, tell us a little bit about you.
Okay, well, my official title, I suppose, is the founder of the Money Confidence Academy. I'm a certified money and mindset coach. And I am really, really passionate, as you said, about helping people to understand how their relationship with money impacts not just on the amount of money in the bank, but on every area of their lives, because our relationship with money is a reflection of our relationship with ourselves and our own sense of self-worth, self-value, and self-confidence. So it underpins everything I do in my business.
Love that. Absolutely love that. Tell me where that passion comes from. What made you decide that this was going to be your thing?
And I didn't know it was going to be my thing. I didn't know I was going to be a business owner. I started off the same way in my life as the majority of people do, being told by my parents to work hard at school, go to university, get a job and a pension, and climb the career ladder. And I was really, really happy doing that for 41 years. And I don't mean working for 41 years, I mean up until the point I was 41. My moisturizer isn't that good. But at 41, having two small children who at that point in time were aged round about 3 and 18 months, I realised having a job up in London, living in Wiltshire, about 90 minutes away, it was just not conducive.
Yeah.
So I decided to retrain as a business coach. I coached and mentored informally throughout my corporate career. I worked in corporate telecommunications. And I was going to retrain as a confidence coach because I had realized very, very early in my career how important confidence was in order to be able to successfully manage a team and successfully do the things I needed to do as part of my everyday job. But the more that I studied, the more that I researched, I saw the connection between confidence, self worth, self value, and eureka, our relationship with money. So that became my real focus to help people understand how intermeshed, how entangled our relationship with ourselves, our own sense of our worth, our own sense of how we value ourselves, then got overlaid and vice versa onto our relationship with money. So if you'd asked me 10 years ago, I am very, very different now. And what I do is very, very different to what I did 10 years ago. But I actually believe this is what I was put on this planet to do.
Fab, love that. And it's interesting, isn't it? When I think about some of my clients who are going through that what happens next process and thinking about what's next in their lives, they might have been in a particular career and done really well in that career and been successful for 30 to 40 years and have but have always relied on their employer potentially to tell them what they're worth. Like they're career lifers and they've already felt rewarded. I know that when I left employment and started the business, one of the greatest learning curves for me is how do you charge? So how was that transition for you, and what do you recommend when you're working with clients to help them get ready for that transition?
Yeah. And I think that is probably, one of the biggest questions, that I get asked is around
Yeah,
about setting pricing, setting fees, and looking at it from a self-worth perspective. Don't look at it from a self-worth perspective. Don't look at it from the perspective of shining a spotlight on you. You shine the spotlight on the people that you are serving. You
yeah,
shine that
100%.
spotlight on the people you are bringing the results for.
Yeah,
Yes, to begin with, you have to be mindful of where you are positioning yourself in your marketplace and making a conscious decision. Because when it comes to pricing, there's not very many things that are original, whether that's being somebody to clean your house, going to speak to a lawyer, having
yeah,
your hair done, etc., etc. But
yeah,
what you are doing is deciding two things: where you are positioning yourself in your marketplace. Do you want to be the cheapest and sell on volume? Do you want to be the most expensive and sell on that? Or do you want to position yourself somewhere in the middle? But also to be mindful about the results that you are bringing for your clients. And
Yeah.
when you do that, when you shine that spotlight on what you're doing for your clients, you're removing your own sense of worthiness from that. And I
Yeah.
think that's what happens, particularly in the beginning when we are setting up our business. We are setting our prices based on how worthy we actually feel, rather than thinking about where do I want to position myself and what are the results I'm bringing for my client. Because when you do that, you actually let go of it being about you and you focus on who it's about, your
So
client.
interesting. So interesting. When I look at the work we do at Savello, we're sort of unashamedly expensive compared to other financial planners because we think we add more value. But one of the things that I'm certainly going to be doing in 2024 in our business is evidencing that value in a more robust way. So effectively, how do we make sure that the clients are getting the best value possible, and how do we show that? And then they can be assured that the more expensive cost is worth the money. And it's an interesting one, but it's certainly been an evolution over the last 13 years for us in terms of getting better at sort of articulating the value of our fee. So it's an important one. What I want to do today though is explore those relationships with money we've got, particularly when we're navigating the next step. And one of the things that when I'm doing the research for these interviews, I like to do is have a look at people's websites and sort of understand a little bit more about about how we can ask questions that are going to have real value to our audience. And one of the things that you mentioned really resonated with me because it said on your website, it said, working through your relationship with money can be the key to unlocking the next step. And that's what we want to do. We want to help people unlock the next steps in their lives. So, what are the things that we need to think about in terms of our relationship with money that allow us to unlock the next steps in our lives?
And that is such a good question, because really the answer is the same throughout our life, regardless of whether it's the next step or what that next stage is
Yeah.
of our lives. And it's having an awareness of the internal script that has been driving us subconsciously throughout our entire life.
Yeah.
And that internal script will go back to being written somewhere between when we were born and the age of 7. And
Yeah.
that script was not written by us, it was written by our parents and those key caregivers who are present in our life. And then something additionally happens round about the age of 12 that really cooks that script into how we manage the rest of our lives until we become aware of those parts of the internal script that are not serving us. Because so many of us were gifted, and I use that word intentionally, were gifted our limiting beliefs around money, our self worth, our self value by our parents. But no parent sets out to go, "Do you know, I'm going to see how many limiting beliefs I can pass on to my children." But our parents, we as parents, are the author of our children's money story. So that
Yeah. Yeah.
script is written by our parents. And it's only when we sit back and we start to realize, what is that script that is going on in my head? What areas is it serving me? And what areas is it not serving me?
I'd imagine a lot of scripts that our parents tell us are designed to keep us safe, right? You know,
Yeah,
it's that element of risk aversion where you turn around and go, well, actually, even though I want to talk quite a lot about self awareness because I think that's probably an important part of this conversation. But
I suppose an element of it, Leslie, when I think about it, is that you can sort of, if you're introspective about those experiences as a child, you can sort of understand why they did it.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. And you can, and it's also because though they were given their script by
yeah,
their parents, who were given the script by their parents, and the circumstances, the economy at the time,
yeah,
what was going on for them in terms of where they believed they were being positioned in society, what opportunities they believed was available for them or not available for them. But because they are largely unconscious, and we are only probably in the last couple of decades become aware of the power of words, the
yeah, yeah,
power of words to control us, and the power of words to limit us. And that control goes on up here and goes on without us actually even thinking about it. And that's why awareness is so, so crucial, but for a lot of us is so uncomfortable, we don't want to even go there.
yeah. It's really interesting as well. Like when you like you mentioned it earlier on, it's like that path of success is you go to school, you do really well, you go to university, and then you get a job, and then you
Yeah,
do 40 years, and then you retire. Um, and I think more and more of us are coming to realise that actually the world is a big place, and we can actually design our lives in whatever way we want. And we need to have a bit more of a open and honest conversation about that. But those paths, what our parents told us success looks like, are still in there somewhere, right?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. And it's really interesting. I was listening to a debate going on today, this morning, with regards to Gen Z and whether Gen Z are lazier than the generations before them. And I would actually offer up and say, no, they are just more informed about their options and their choices
yeah,
and more prepared to step outside the norm of
yeah.
what your parents tell you you should be doing than any other generation has been prepared to do before.
Yeah,
And
because
I
it's
think
more information available, right?
exactly,
Yeah,
absolutely. And there's more ability to see what other people are doing and
yeah,
questioning, do I want the same as my parents told me was
yeah,
available for me? Or
yeah,
do
yeah,
I believe I want to go down a completely different path? So I think big, big changes are coming, but whenever big changes are coming, there are always people who are tightly holding on to things as they were because actually it makes them need, whether they will, but it makes them need to question their choices and the validity of the decisions they've previously taken.
and challenging ourselves often is difficult, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
that process of being introspective and going, you know, are these things I still believe and things I'm holding on to because it feels safe is a difficult process. What's the baby step towards getting ready for that change? What's the first thing that people need to do to get ready for that change?
I think it's a case of reverse engineering. So working out what is it you actually want that next step to look like. If somebody could wave a magic wand for you and your next step could look like exactly what you wanted it to look like, what would that look like? And then to say to yourself, okay, if this is what I want, what do I need to do to go and get it?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
how do I get out of my way if there is evidence that I'm going to get in my own way in order to get it? And I
yeah,
think as we get older, we largely become more risk averse. And when we become more risk averse, we limit the horizon as far as our opportunities are concerned. So I think if we went back to the state that we were all born in as babies, confident, because every single baby is born with one particular trait in common, and that is rock solid confidence that we're going to get what we want when we want it, and nothing and no one is going to stop us. If we can, as adults, peering down, us moving to that next step, if we can think with the mindset of a baby with complete rock solid confidence, that then starts to expose those areas that we are challenged by. It exposes those areas that we are scared about, and then it gives us a choice. We
So
can do
interesting.
about it or not.
The question that I love in this area is, if you knew you couldn't fail, what would you do?
Yeah, absolutely.
And actually, then you can design. And the reality is, we're all going to fail and get up and try again and do all of that sort of stuff in between. But understanding what you actually want, assuming that life's not going to get in the way, is the starting point for then to build backwards, isn't it? I really like that. I really like that. However, we have got an issue. And it's an issue I see quite a lot, because I've started to say to clients when they first come in to see me, let's be honest, if you had your ideal sort of life, you wouldn't be choosing to spend your Wednesday afternoon sitting in front of somebody like me. And part of that is because having conversations with money is difficult, about money is difficult. So how do we encourage people to just view money as a thing that we need to talk about more?
Yeah. And it goes back to, again, that, that big vision thinking about what is it you really want. Do you want to get to the end of your life and go, oh God, if only I'd been a bit braver, if only I'd had more open conversations? Money is just an enabler. And that's all money is. Money just allows you to do the things you want to do, or prevents you from doing the things that you want to do. But money doesn't actually prevent or really get you to do any of those things. It's you taking the action that then results in the money going into the bank, that you can then do the things that you've dreamed about.
But also, money is just a tool to live the life you want. And I think sometimes the stories we tell are either make money bigger, prescribe a certain personality to people who earn money or don't, and also make us feel guilty about having more money as well, which is the other interesting side. We talked a little bit earlier about the life limiting beliefs. What are the common ones that you see quite a lot when you're working with the clients, helping them just navigate what money actually means in terms of their lives?
Yeah, but it can vary, because a lot of people think limiting beliefs around money is what is preventing them from making more money. It is the thing that limits the amount that they will ever have access to, limits the kind of lifestyle they're going to have. And that absolutely is the case for, a number of my clients. They have that belief. But there are also people who are very successful, who have plenty of money, who have built, incredible businesses, but actually don't get to enjoy that money at all, for fear of being seen to show off, for being seen to be the person their parents talked about who had money. Because when you have money, some people will make assumptions about you in terms of being a bad person, trying to show off, trying to undermine other people, etc., etc. But it all comes back to those two same things: how you value yourself and how worthy you actually feel. And those two things have the greatest impact on your behaviors and your emotions. And then as a result, the action that you take. So you will play small. You won't put boundaries in place. You won't be visible in your career in terms of promotion, or you won't be visible in your business in terms of letting people know who you are, what you do, etc., etc. You mentioned a point that this year, you're going to be talking more about the value that you bring to your clients. A lot of people will shy away from sharing testimonials, from talking about the results they bring for their client. Why? Because they don't want to be seen as being that person. They don't want to be seen as showing off. They don't want to be seen drawing attention to themselves because of all the messaging that they were fed when they were younger with regards to people who had money, who had success, and the types of people that they were. So when it comes to the limiting beliefs that people have, those limiting beliefs are about themselves, then the action that they take or don't take impacts the amount of money they make or how they feel about spending money, saving money, investing in money, because they believe that is a reflection on them. And it's only when we take that away can we actually change our relationship with ourselves. And then that has the positive impact on our relationship with money.
So interesting. When I think about this and how it applies to my clients, number one, hopefully what we do as financial planners is give people clarity on what they can afford to spend to make sure they never run out, and that might include them earning more in the future. It might not, but our job is to provide clarity in terms of that plan.
I really hope you're enjoying the interview so far. But now what I'd like you to do is take action to help you work out what happens next in your life. The easiest way to do that is to do the What Happens Next quiz. It's free to do, takes about 5 minutes, and you can do it while you make a cup of tea and wait for the next part of the interview. You can visit www.whathappensnext.life/quiz. You'll get your results by email immediately. And what the quiz will do is give you an insight into the areas of wellbeing you're doing really well at, but also the areas that you might want to improve. Enjoy the quiz. Let us know what you think, and let's get on with the interview.
But when I think about the relationship between money and happiness, one of our previous guests, funny enough, a guy called Chris Budd, who runs the Institute of Financial Wellbeing, talks about this quite a lot. I think what's the easiest connection between money and happiness? Work out what makes you happy and spend money on that, right? That's about as simple as it gets. But before we do that, we need to do all this work around making sure that we're comfortable doing that, and that goes back to our relationship with money. So let's talk about getting those barriers out of the way in terms of our relationship, a healthy relationship with money, and those things that are those life-limiting beliefs that are holding us back. What do we do about that? How do we fix that?
And I think, again, and I'm sorry if I'm a stuck record on this, but a healthy relationship with money starts with a healthy relationship with ourselves in terms of our self-worth and our self-value. The way that we understand how we are feeling about ourselves in terms of that right now is creating the awareness. You create that awareness by understanding your script. The easy way to understand your script, a really practical exercise for anybody to undertake, is to carry a notebook and pen around for 24 hours. Every time a negative thought comes into your head, write it down, but not in the negative. Write it down in the positive, because you don't want to be affirming that negative thought. You want to be creating a positive thought. But what that does is, first of all, you will look at that list at the end of the 24-hour period, and you will be very surprised at how often we all have a negative conversation with ourselves. So that's wake
Interesting.
up call number one.
Yeah.
Number two, sorry, carry on. Yeah, I can see you've got a question.
One that I over Christmas, because I love psychology, and I've read a lot of psychology books. And Cassie, my wife, for Christmas bought me one by Philippa Perry, who's Grayson Perry, the artist's wife, but in her own right is this
Oh,
amazing writer and psychologist. And she's got a phrase in her book. So the book's called, and we'll put a link in the notes to this. Um, uh, the book you want everybody you love to read. And
write it down.
she's got a phrase about self-talk and the stories we tell ourselves, which is really good because, as you know, we are prone to negative self-talk, but we can also train ourselves to be more positive when we're using self-talk. And her phrase she uses, which I really like, is negative stories are not true. Overly optimistic stories are not true. The reality is always somewhere in the middle. But if you're going to tell yourself a story, make it a good one.
Yeah, yeah,
And I love
yeah,
that phrase like that.
yeah.
Like any story we tell ourselves is for a frame, isn't it? It's all fiction,
Oh, yeah.
because we view the world through our own perspective. But if we're going to tell ourselves stories, why don't we just make them good? I love that. I
Absolutely.
love that. I
And
love
who
that.
does it hurt? And I think that is the thing. Who does it hurt when we're telling ourselves good stories? I'll share a little thing with you now. My children are 17 and 15. They have never told me they don't believe in Father Christmas. I know they don't believe in Father Christmas, but they love the magic that me and their dad have created around Christmas and all the little traditions of, the mince pie and the carrot going out on Christmas Eve and the
Yeah,
coming down to check on Christmas Day, has he been when you go into the living room, etc., etc. We know, they know what's been going on in reality, but we have this little story because it brings us joy. And
yeah.
that allows us to really live in the moment of the magic of Christmas, etc. And I try to recreate that, for myself on a regular basis. It's my favorite phrase is, but what if I fail? But oh my darling, what if you fly?
Yeah. Was that
And
Winnie
I
the Pooh?
tell myself that.
Yeah.
I'd have to look it up. I can't. Hang on. Is it? I've got it on my wall, but no, I haven't got who it's by. It's a lady, but I can't remember her name. And that really, really works for me in those moments where I'm having self doubt, because we
Yeah.
all have it. I allow myself to actually say, but what if you fly? And
Yeah.
that
Interesting.
goops me up and gives me that sense of motherly love that when you fall over, it's going to be okay. So I think
Yeah.
those stories we tell ourselves, if they are allowing us to move forward positively, then that is a brilliant gift to give to
It's
ourselves.
and how much? I mean, it's interesting because I'm pretty sure we'll talk about this, but how much of all of this stuff is how we frame it, right? So, still, the story that I like to tell is, and I think as a parent, and all of our what happens next community have probably done this, and their kids have started to grow up like ours now. But as a parent, I think if I look at my two, Sophie's probably a little more resilient than Charlotte. And part of the reason is, like, I think with first kids, like when they fall over, you go, "Oh, you're all right," and pick them up and look after them. I did that less with Sophie, and I remember I can't remember, Athens, I think we were in, and she fell over a rock and she hurt her knee, and we made sure she was okay and stuff like that. But at the end, I said, "Oh, you've got an adventure." She had a little bruise and a scar on her knee. I went, "Amazing, you've got an adventurer's mark." And that to me is just her turning around and going, look, we're going to get knocked around a bit, we all do,
Yeah.
but treating it as learned experience for future growth is probably a better frame than going, oh, I'm hurt again and I'm in pain. So it's interesting what you learn as a parent. What we're really keen on at What Happens Next, Lesley, is to talk about financial well-being, using money as a tool to lead happier, healthier, more satisfied lives. But I'm really curious, what does financial well-being mean to you? And what are your top tips about how we can potentially improve financial well-being in our lives?
Yeah. Financial well-being to me is freedom, choice, joy, and contentment.
Love that.
I think it's all four of those things. And I think that financial well-being should be at the core of everything that gets taught to our children at school, not just financial literacy, because financial literacy is a means to financial well-being. And I think we tend to these days, and we still do it now, we tend to think of financial well-being as being something that is going to come at a later stage. It's having a pension, it's having paid off your mortgage, etc., etc. When actually, if we approach financial well-being as a real objective right from the very beginning, when children are born, and we see it as something that's inherent in everything that we do, it makes us more mindful. It makes us more purposeful. It makes us be looking at money in a far more positive way and far more respectful around money as well. Because I think lots of us, I've definitely been guilty of this, but lots of us don't treat money with the respect it deserves in terms of, that phrase, look after the pennies and the pounds will look after themselves. That, I think, is a perfect phrase that we should be encouraging children from very young age to be mindful of, because that is the essence to financial well-being. That's how you create that contentment, that joy, that freedom, and that choice. Because at the end,
I love that. I love that description of it. Freedom and choice is what money should give us. And I think the way that I look at that, and I'd be interested in your thoughts on that, is that freedom and choice is about today and tomorrow, right? And I think you're right. I think we focus a lot on freedom and choice tomorrow, and don't get the balance right between freedom and choice today. I've had clients where we've had conversations, Lesley, where I'm going, you need to spend more money because you're never going to run out. Now, I'm not saying spending more money is going to improve their well-being, because if they're spending it on stuff they don't value, that's another conversation. But actually, if they've got the stuff in their list that they want to do and they've got the money to do it, actually spending more could potentially improve their well-being because it will create more memories. But what's stopping us having more freedom and choice, and why are we not doing more about it?
Again, I think it's because of the messaging that we have been given. And I'll give you a really good example of this. And my 17-year-old son is currently deciding whether he wants to go to university or not. And he said to us at the weekend, I don't want to go to university and then suddenly be pulling my pension. I said, Adam, there's a lot happens in between those two things. But it's because the messaging he's been getting, not from us, because he keeps saying, but look, Mum and Dad, you run your own businesses. You've made different choices. So, but actually, we did go to university. We did go on the corporate ladder. We did start a pension. And then we made different choices. So I think very often we consider things as being, it has to be that or that, rather than realizing the route to where we are now is not linear. There will be different twists and turns in the road, but to realize it is, and you can have choice today. As a money coach, I am not there to look at clients' expenditure and say, cut out going to Costa Coffee and stop going out so much. And why are you buying so many clothes? And why are you going on such expensive holidays, etc., etc.? Because that is a mindset of lack. That is a mindset of scarcity. We all know that, sadly, illness is actually, people who suffer from cancer, etc., there is more, not less of that happening. So our tomorrows are not assured. Only today is assured. Again, don't live with a mindset of, my God, I might die tomorrow, therefore I go out and spend everything. But actually think about, how can I live meaningfully today, create happiness, joy, connection, freedom, options, choice, and also be planning mindfully and meaningfully for my tomorrows as well. Let's not rob Peter to pay Paul. Let's look at how we can achieve that balance, and that balance can be achieved by understanding the conversation you are having with yourself, the behaviors, the emotions, and the actions you're taking as a result.
And it's actually what we're doing there by having those conversations is empowering ourselves to have better todays and tomorrows, right? That's the point on that. We've talked a lot about our beliefs and our values, and in terms of the impact on financial well-being, if we're examining our beliefs and values and building whatever financial well-being looks like for us based on those, but our beliefs and values differ, how do we use them to ensure that we're building whatever we're building for financial well-being in the right way?
Well, most people, I think, don't sit down and actually consider what their values actually are. If you said to somebody, so what are your values? Well, I'm nice, and I look after my family, and I'm kind to people that I know. Yeah, they're kind of, your behaviors to a certain extent. They're not really your values. So it is about drilling down to, what are the values that are leading you to live your life in the way that you are? Are you comfortable with some of the values that you have chosen as far as your behaviors are concerned? Or is there an underlying need that is driven from those behaviors that reflect back to your values? So going for promotion and bad mouthing the person that you're up against, is that in alignment with your own values? Or would you rather win that promotion because you are the best candidate for the job, rather than putting doubt in the mind of the person who's making that decision? That's an example there. So I think for me, and something I encourage my clients to do, is to actually sit down, write down their top 10 values, and then to order them so they actually have their top 3. And the way to do that is to write down what you think are your top 10, and then say from top down, if I could have that, so if I could have financial freedom, my second one being fun, if I could have financial freedom, but I couldn't have fun, would that be okay? Not sure. Maybe, actually, I'd rather have fun than financial freedom. That means I have to move fun to the top of my list. And you keep going down and you keep drilling down, and you get to a point where you go, okay, so these are my values. How does that align with how I manage my relationship with money, and the future that I want to have for myself.
But I think values and purpose is the starting point to all of this, right?
Yeah.
When we built the What Happens Next model, the reason value and purpose sits in the middle is because working out what we actually want from our lives doesn't start with how much money we need. It starts with who do we stand for, and who do we want to be, and what represents us as humans, so that we can do it. Couple of things on that. Number one is a tip for our viewers and listeners. There's a really good tool, and wherever you're reading this, we'll make sure that it goes in the show notes. I'm writing about this for the What Happens Next book at the minute, that effectively does that. Does all of the technical element of that ranking of values for you. I think it's values.es is the website, and it's amazing because what it does is really give you a framework to, and it's a quiz, and it will say what's more important, fun or this. Okay, you said fun was more important. Let's measure it against this one, and it does that ranking for you. It's really I've done the assessment. It's a really powerful way to work out what your values are if you're getting stuck. The other interesting point you raised earlier, Lesley, that I want to come back to, is we have got more choice in our lives. And particularly whilst, for the What Happens Next community, whilst they might have been on a sort of track that's pretty conventional, they've now reached a point where they've got complete freedom to do what they want, and a lot of the clients that I've spoken to who are in this stay with the status quo, not because they're happy, but because it's comfortable. It's because they know it, because they've done it for so long. One of the conversations I've had with many clients is choice is difficult. So if we can choose to do anything, we're not choosing. If we can choose to do everything, it's probably easier not to choose to do anything.
Yeah.
How do we then filter the choices we need to make so that first natural next step becomes a bit easier?
Yeah. And I think that's it. I think choice can be overwhelming. When you have too many decisions to make, you will make no decision. And very often with a next step in the way that we view it in the normal sense of the word is all or nothing. You're working, you're retired, and there's nothing in between, which is ridiculous. Because it's a little bit like what happens with Christmas to a certain extent. We, from probably beginning of October, middle of October, we start seeing the Christmas adverts, and then the Christmas films, and then the Christmas decorations, and then the Christmas offers, etc., right up until Christmas Day. Then Christmas Day happens, and it's like pulling a sticking plaster off almost. The adverts start, the sales come on, it's holiday time, etc., etc. We do dry January, we start our diet, we start doing more exercise, etc., and we hit January and we are exhausted and we are depressed because of that all or nothing mentality. And I think when it comes to the next step of our life, again, it comes back to what do I want that to look like?
Yeah.
Most entrepreneurs will say, if they're true entrepreneurs, not just business owners, but entrepreneurs, they will actually say, I have absolutely no plans whatsoever to retire. Warren Buffett, 1992, no plans to retire. Bill Gates, etc. No plans to retire. Why would I want to go from doing something I love just because, in theory, I have reached an age where I can take money from the pot? I can take money from the pot, but why do I need to stop doing something that gives me fulfillment, gives me joy, gives me 100%. Connection, etc.?
That's the whole concept of what happens next. Why are we making decisions that are conventional but don't serve our lives?
Absolutely.
However, I agree with you that one of the probably one of the most powerful things that we can do is understand that whatever we do in life isn't all or nothing, including change.
Yeah.
So if we want to dip our toe in, there's a really good book called Designing Your Life by Bill Burnett. If we think, for example, consulting's going to work, just do a little bit of consulting, and if you don't like it, stop. And if you do a bit more.
Yeah.
And it's that incremental gain to change, incremental route to change, as opposed to this all or nothing mentality, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, going back to what I said about Gen Z earlier on, there's a lot in the press that's saying, Gen Z, are refusing to take jobs that require them going into the office. They want to work from home. Actually, there are lots of jobs where you can work very, very successfully from home and combine that with popping into an office, popping into co-working. So Gen Z are actually questioning the norm, because just because it's normal doesn't mean it has to be that way going forward. And I think for lots of people, actually taking away from them their label being, I am an accountant, I am a lawyer, I am a doctor, etc., and saying, you're not anymore. You're no longer that thing. You no longer go to your place of work. You no longer have those conversations with those people. Their identity is completely and utterly shot. And it's from that perspective we need to actually be viewing our whole selves. So our whole selves is not just an accountant, a mum, a dad, a friend, a daughter, a business owner, etc., etc. We need to look at our identity as the whole circle of our being, who we are, who we want to be, who we need to become, and view that from the perspective of possibility. Because when we do that, we give ourselves the permission to look at the art of what is possible for us and to understand what limiting beliefs do we have right now. So being full circle in the conversation, what limiting beliefs do we have right now that is stopping us from truly leaning into the full extent of the art of the possible for us? Because when we do that, it's like sitting down with the genie that you've let out of your lamp and saying to the genie, grant me my wishes. These are my wishes. This is what I need to do to be able to achieve that. And I'm afraid, but sod it. I'm going to feel the fear and I'm going to do it anyway. Because that is when you truly are you. You truly open up to what you are capable of when you let go of those limiting beliefs.
No, I absolutely love that. And I suppose there's a, like, with a lot of our clients, and I've seen it plenty of times where, you know, it is scary to give up something you've done, particularly, and this is the other interesting point you raise, particularly when it comes with status and identity, right? So if you're defined as something that gives us status in society, even if it doesn't make us happy, we might cling on to it a little longer than we should. And it's encouraging people to explore more. I absolutely love that. Tell me a story. Tell me a story about, and again, keep it as confidential as you need to. Tell me a story about when you've supported a client through the process of thinking about what happens next in their lives and how that's gone.
Yeah. Oh, there's so many stories I could choose. Let me think of one particular one. I think I'm going to think of one client in particular, and she actually contacted me yesterday, and she's never ever enjoyed Christmas, ever enjoyed Christmas, because she was brought up to believe that Christmas was a time of excess. It was a time where people indulged in behaviors they shouldn't indulge in, whether that is greed, overly spending, getting into debt, buying things that weren't necessary, etc., etc. And she always struggled with the concept of providing a good Christmas for her children, not because she couldn't afford to, but because she was brought up with a real guilt around, the whole of that time of year, basically.
Right.
And I think for, a lot of people, Christmas has obviously extended out exponentially now. It's no longer the tree goes up, a week before Christmas and comes down 12 days after Christmas, whatever.
It felt this year it started in the middle of August, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. And I love Christmas, absolutely love it. But for me, keep it for December, but actually celebrate the hell out of it for the entire month of December. But this client really, really struggled because she had a script that basically said spending money was bad. Overindulging people was spoiling them. Spending a certain amount of money, was showing off. It was adding to the pressure of the amount of stuff that was in the world that was not needed, etc., etc. And when we worked together last year, we really unpicked her internal script. And yesterday, I had an email from her to say it was her best Christmas ever.
Oh, I love that.
Because she knew that up until then, she had been living her parents' Christmases, her grandparents' Christmases, and their situation was very different to hers.
Yeah.
She wasn't enjoying her success. She was living by somebody else's conditions for how she should be spending her time, how she should be spending her money, and her sense of self-worth and self-value was totally attached to what she'd been told tens of decades earlier that was having, and she realized the legacy she was passing on to her children was not a legacy that she wanted to, was not a legacy she had created. It was a one that was given to her by her family. And I think when we realize that any of our limiting beliefs, be they us not being able to have the career that we want to, not being able to build the business we want to, not being able to create the life that we want to, when we realize it's based on those stories we're telling ourselves, then that empowers us because we can then make a decision. Once we have that awareness, we can either choose to ignore it and do nothing, and that is a decision, or we can choose to do things differently and create a different future for ourselves.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Lesley, thank you for your insights today. It's been really, really good. I've really enjoyed it. Where can people find out a little bit more about you if they need to get in touch and re-navigate and rewrite their money stories?
The one place probably is the easiest because there's access to my podcast there, which is called Let's Talk Money and More. And all my social media is via my website, which is themoneyconfidenceacademy.com. And all ways of contacting with me can be found there.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
I really hope you enjoyed that. And one of the things that we really want you to do is get as much from the What Happens Next project as you can. And we think that one of the big things you're going to get loads from once it's written is the What Happens Next book. Now, that's currently a work in progress. So I'm doing the work to complete the book now. It will be ready in 2025. But what you can do today is join the waiting list. So you're one of the first people to get a copy and get loads of goodies on top. Because if you join the waiting list today, not only will you get access to the book First, you'll also get loads of goodies that we're currently working on in addition to the book, now ready for launch. To join the waiting list, simply visit whathappensnext.life/book and you'll be the first to know when the book comes out. So that was the interview with Lesley. I hope you really enjoyed it. And I'd love to know what you think of the podcast so far. We're 11 episodes in. We've got loads more to go, but we'd love to know what you think. Simply visit www.whathappensnext.life and you can get in touch with us. There'll be some contact details on the website. Get in touch with us. Anything you want us to talk about specifically around the area of what happens next, around that area of transition in our 50s and 60s and how we move beyond, let us know, because we'd love to build and create content specifically designed for the challenges you're facing at the minute. So hopefully that was enjoyable. Hope you have a great day and we'll see you on What Happens Next soon.